Good morning once again to everyone. We are continuing on chapter 1.1. We would have left off at a certain point last week. We left off at looking at a specific section. Now, what we're going to do at the start of class, we're going to have a brief review to see if you guys were following in the last class, to ensure you were understanding um, what was happening in the class and so on. So, just some brief questions, and anyone that knows the answer, you can go ahead and see the answer. Um, a computer operates following a cycle. Anybody remembers what is the name of that cycle?
Sir, the IPOS cycle?
Very good. The IPOS cycle. Good. What does the I stand for?
Input.
Input. Very good. P.
Processing.
Good. And O.
Output.
Good. And S.
Storage.
Storage. Good. So our second question is the computer is made up of two categories. What are the two categories?
Hardware and
Hardware and
software.
software.
Very good.
Software and hardware.
Very good. So hardware and software. We would have started hardware last week. How many categories does hardware have?
3.
3. Anyone else? How many categories does hardware have? Well, it's actually 5. 5 categories hardware has. So, very good on the revision. So, I'm hoping from the next class we can hear from a little more persons. So, as mentioned, we're at 1.1. We would have already started it. And we would have stopped at hardware. And hardware has 5 categories, 5 general categories. So please remember, once again, you guys are making your notes. If I'm going too fast, if I need to slow down, if I need to clarify something for you to make that note, let me know. And when we're looking at those 5 categories, we started with the first one. We started with the central processing unit. And we mentioned that the CPU has 2 parts. It has the CU and the ALU. Alright, so let me find that image that I was using. Alright. So let's need to open it in Paint. Right. So this is the diagram that you guys were supposed to have up to now. So we're going to continue the diagram with the remaining categories as we complete those categories today. So we already concluded on CPU, so now we're going to go to input devices. So we're going to start from the top. Akila, can you read for us? You're going to read 2 and 3. Akila, are you there? Seems Akila has left us. Alian?
Yes, sir. Input devices get data into a computer. A mouse, a keyboard, and a scanner are all input devices. Output devices get processed information out of a computer. For example, to a printer, computer screen, or even to speakers.
Good. So, if we go back to our diagram that we were working on, 2, we're going to add input devices, and then 3, we're going to have output devices. Now, you can spell them out so that you can remember them. Just write in a chart so that you have some space. Now, these devices here, they also have branches. So if you want to put some space between them also, you can do so, because there's some other variations when it comes to input devices and output devices. There are other types also. But for now, we're looking at the main category: input device, output device. So as we already determined from our IPOS cycle, input device data into the computer. It puts data into the computer, gets data, transfers data, however you want to phrase it. That's the purpose of an input device. Remember that first two letters, IN, data goes into the computer. And we already looked at some examples like the mouse, the keyboard. Can't remember if anybody mentioned the scanner. But those are some examples of input devices. There's an entire chapter on input devices, and we'll look at more examples of those devices. And we already looked at considered output devices. Once something is saying out, it's indicating that it's coming out of the computer or it's coming out of the device. So it is getting processed information out of the computer. So we have examples like a printer, a screen, or a speaker. Those are all output devices. Um, I think I would have said last week that a screen is called a monitor. So I'll have to take that back, because monitors aren't the only screens. I was only thinking about desktop at that moment in time, because your laptop, you would say that is a screen and not a monitor. What you have in your phone, on your tablet right now, you would say that is a screen and not a monitor. But functionality, it's basically the same. So that is our second and third category of hardware. Now the order is not important. It's just that we have 5 categories and they put them into this order. The order is not that important. Are you guys following so far?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Alright. So the next 2 categories, we have memory. Or before we move on to that, so just remember I had given you guys a homework. So get the definition for data and information, because if you notice here, it came back. We input data and we output information. So what is the difference between the two? Um, would one person like to share the definition of data?
Data refers to raw input that, when processed or arranged, makes meaningful output.
Good. So what's the first part?
Input.
Raw input. Good. Um, anyone else? Anyone else with a different definition for data? Or you guys didn't do the homework?
Sir, I have data is information that has been translated into a form that is efficient for moving or processing.
Okay, so your data has to be transformed. Was that the word?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else?
Uh, I have data is a collection of values. Those values can be characters, numbers, or any other data type.
I didn't hear that clearly, Fazil.
I have data is a collection of values. Those values can be characters, numbers, or any other data type.
Okay, a collection of characters. Um, Good. Um, I'm not seeing the what I'm exactly looking for, but we can still pull from what we have here. So, so far from the definitions that we have for data, it is raw input, data has to be transferred, data is just characters. So, in essence, the term data basically refers to something that we humans do not understand or we do not comprehend. So that's why it is considered as raw because it's in a state that we might not recognize. So that's why it has to be transformed into that information because information is what we understand. Um, so let me get some definitions for information.
Information is the process outcome of data.
So process outcome. Anyone else?
Information is a group of data that collectively carries a logical meaning.
Good. One more.
Sir, I have information is a stimuli that has meaning in some context for its receiver.
Good. So it has meaning. Good. So with information now, information is data that has been processed, that has been changed. We already looked at that term last week. What does process mean? It means to change something, to manipulate something, to perform some sort of calculation, to do something with the data. So information is when you process that data. And the data now, when it turns into information, is going to have some sort of meaning. You are going to understand what it is. So, um, for example, if we look at a keyboard, we were talking about the keyboard, and a keyboard is an input. Now, we talked about last week that when you press a key on the keyboard, a signal is sent to your computer. Now, if you were to see that signal, or if you were to know what is the code sent to the computer, then, for example, say this is the code here. That's the code that's sent to the computer. Can you guys figure out what character that represents? Would you guys be able to? Just looking at it right now, can you tell what if it's going to be the letter A or if it's going to be the letter N? Can you figure that out? Yes or no?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No, you cannot figure that out. So that is like data. You're looking at it, but you can't really understand what it is. It's not really making sense. So when that data now gets processed, remember we're still talking about this IPOS cycle. When that data is input, it gets processed, we get an output now. that gives us information. It gives us meaning. And that output is going to be the character. A letter A, a letter N, whatever the case may be. So information is what we humans can understand, what we can read. It has meaning. So let's move on to our next two categories of hardware. Asifa.
Yes, sir.
Can you read for us?
So which part, sir?
I marked it up in memory, so read.
Memory enables a computer to temporarily store instructions and data. Storage media includes hard disks, CD-ROMs, DVDs, and USB flash memory sticks. While the storage devices include hard disk drives, CD-ROM drives, and DVD drives, most of these devices can read data while others, such as USB flash memory sticks, allow data to be saved as well as read.
Good. So our fourth category of hardware is the memory that is inside of a computer. This memory, it's a storage, a form of storage. We have the storage media, but it has its own category because this type of storage is temporary, whereas our storage media is going to be permanent. You can always come back and get the results later on. So memory is temporary, whereas our storage media is going to be permanent. So this memory here is what your computer uses to store the instructions that you are going to input. So this part here is going to start getting a bit technical. So if you guys aren't following, let me know. Looking for an image. Good. So last week we talked about an image like this here. Anyone remembers what this is?
Sorry to CPU.
The entire black square,
A
What are the
motherboard, sir.
motherboard?
the motherboard. Good. So and the CPU would be on it, right? Good. Now that memory that we just spoke about, um, this memory here that temporarily stores instructions, it is located at the bottom here. Notice this black and yellow area here. That is where the memory will go in your computer. So if you were to draw a diagram, so I'm going to give you another diagram to help you understand how a computer basically functions. So this is the motherboard. This is your CPU. And this is going to be a memory. And let's see what else. You're going to have some USB ports. So we're going to imagine this is a USB port, and your mouse is going to be connected here, and your keyboard is going to be connected here. And inside of the computer is where your storage media is going to be connected. So say for instance, this is going to have a cable, run into your hard drive in your computer. So this is your hard drive. So input. Good. Before we continue with the diagram, let's look at the storage media. So the memory category, as mentioned, it temporarily stores data. Now your storage media, which is your fifth category of hardware, is basically where you store data permanently, as I mentioned. So that's going to be your hard disk, as I just mentioned in the diagram, CD-ROM, DVD, flash drives, and so on. They all store data permanently. Now, what I want you to take note of, something very important, is that there's a difference between storage media and a storage device. You have to know the difference between the two. Now, a storage media is what stores the data. That is the device, or that is the equipment that stores the data. That's what has all of your movies, all of your files, all of your games. The storage media is what stores your data. So in this case, your hard disk, your CD-ROM, your SD card, those are all the storage media. Now the storage devices is basically what the media uses to connect to the computer. So so basically this is your computer here. Let's imagine this is your computer. You're going to have a storage device. So storage device, and then you're going to have your storage media. So the storage media has to go through the storage device, and then the storage device communicates with the computer. So for those of you who have a laptop or a desktop and it has an area where you can basically put in a CD-ROM. Anyone, if you have a laptop or desktop like that?
Yes, sir.
Right. So that is called the CD drive. So the fact that you can put a CD or a DVD into your computer, that is called a CD drive or a DVD drive, whichever one it can facilitate. That is your storage device. It is used to read the data off of the storage media. So if you didn't have that storage device, you would not have been able to connect your storage media, such as your CD and your DVD, to the computer. So that's the difference between the two. But some of these um, you do not necessarily see the storage device. For example, a flash drive. We have a bunch of USB ports, and the hard drive is just plugging in a cable. It's not like the CD-ROM and the DVD-ROM where we have an entire device that we have to put in that disk inside of. These, the USB and the hard disk, are just plugging into a certain port and you get that connection. But on the computer itself is going to have that storage device to facilitate the communication, or even the storage media itself sometimes can have that storage device. But either way, the storage media, whatever it is, if it's a CD, it needs a storage device. So in this case, a CD drive. And that's how it gets connection. That's how it communicates with your computer. Are you guys following?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
If I need to go there back over for anyone, please let me know. Um, so let's see. So if you notice, a trick that can help you is that for storage devices, notice for all of these storage devices, they end with a keyword. Anybody notice that keyword?
Drives?
Drives, very good. So all of these storage devices end with that keyword drive. So that's how you can actually tell the difference between a storage media and a storage device. It has that keyword of the drives at the end of it. So a hard disk drive, that is a storage device, and it connects a hard disk to the computer. CD-ROM drive connects a CD-ROM to the computer. Um, any of you ever heard about a floppy disk?
Yes, sir.
Right? So for those who haven't, this is what a floppy disk looks like. And if you were to search for a floppy disk drive, notice this is what's going to come up here. This device here. So this is the floppy disk that you're seeing showing up as a disk. But this device here, this is the drive. This is the floppy disk drive that you put the disk into so that it can be connected to the computer. So that's the difference between the two. Storage devices do not store data. They only help to transfer the data. That's their purpose. To transfer the data from the media to the computer. The storage media is what stores the data. Now, so those are our five categories of hardware: CPU, input, output, memory, and storage. Are you guys following in all five categories?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I'm only hearing two persons, but I'm to the rest. The rest of you not following?
Yes, sir.
So, continuing now, we're going to this diagram to look at how does a computer function? How does those categories work together? So, over here, I'm going to draw another port, and this is going to be our monitor, a small monitor. So this is going to be output. So this is how your computer functions. How all of those categories of hardware work together, and how we basically get this definition here that a computer is an electronic device operating under the control of instructions stored in its memory. So let's have a visual representation of that definition there. Now, in this computer here, where do you store your data? Or on a normal computer, where do you store your data? No one? Alright. So you store your data on the storage media. As we just talked about, it is stored on the storage media. So most computers today, all computers today, use a hard disk or a hard drive in order to store the data. So this here is going to be our storage media. That's what is storing our data. That's what's storing your data permanently. That's why you can turn on your computer and all your assignments are still there, all of your homework, all of your games, because it was permanently stored on the hard drive, on the storage media. Now, when your computer, say for instance you want to play a game, the game is going to be stored on the hard drive of the computer. Right? Everything permanently has to be stored here so that we can access it later on. So the game is going to be in a hard drive. And how does it get to the monitor? How does it get to that screen for you to see that you are playing the game? Well, the game has to be pulled from the hard drive to the memory in your computer. So firstly, it's going to be on the hard drive. And then it's going to go on to the memory. So that game, or you can say the instructions of the game, is pulled into memory. And that's how we get this definition here. That the computer operates under the control of instructions stored in its memory. That is how your computer functions all the time. Anything that it needs to do must first be loaded into memory in order for it to function. So if you ever open Microsoft Word, it has to be loaded into memory in order for you to use Microsoft Word. And if you actually want to check on your computer what is in your memory, if you right click on the taskbar at the bottom here, this is called the taskbar. You can remember, you can take note of that also. This is called the taskbar, and you're going to find an option called the task manager. So when you click on that, you're going to notice that we have a memory section here. So I'm on the process. Some of you, it might open like this here. So just click more details, and you're going to see it looking like this here. All of the applications that you have open, it shows you how much the CPU is using and how much memory it is taking up of your computer. So notice I have Microsoft Word open and it's taking up 56 megabytes. I have Microsoft Edge open and it is taking up almost 1100 megabytes. 1 gigabyte of data of that memory here. So notice all of these applications here that I have open. Notice I have 3 paint open and it is stored inside of memory. Look, it's telling you here how much of memory it is taking up. So whatever you're doing on your computer, it has to first be loaded into memory, because memory is actually faster than your hard drive. So that's why it actually uses the memory. It doesn't go directly from hard drive to the CPU, because that's going to be slower than the memory. So the CPU now is going to process the data, and it looks at the memory, looks at the data, and processes that data. And when it finishes processing that data, that's how you get an output on the screen. Give me a second, I'm feeling upset. Yes, as I was saying, this is basically how your computer functions. This is how I'm trying to find my cursor. Yes. This is how we can describe the definition, having instructions inside of the memory, how all of the categories of hardware, how they work together to complete that IPOS cycle. I'm going to go it over one more time. You have data. It doesn't necessarily have to be on your hard drive. Once it's on permanent storage media, it gets pulled into your memory, and then that data is get the CPU accesses that data in the memory, and it gets processed, and you get an output on the screen. So you can see that, um, say for instance, you have a Word document open, you are typing on the keyboard, the Word document would have been pulled from the hard drive to memory. As you type on the keyboard, you make your input, that input goes to memory, where it's going to be put inside of the Word, and the CPU is going to process all of those instructions, and you get the output onto the screen. Are you guys following?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Give me a second, still feeling upset. Alright, is there anyone with any questions on the diagram? Anything that we need clarifications on? Anything that you didn't understand? Now's that time.
No, sir.
Alright.
No, sir.
Alright, let's go back to our notes then. So we should have an idea now as to how a computer functions. So next, what is a peripheral, Azia?
Peripheral devices. Peripheral devices are located outside the CPU but are controlled by it. That is, they can be added to a computer system. Input, output, and storage devices may be peripheral devices.
Give me a second. I think I might need to comment or something. But give me a second. Alright, I'm back. Are you guys good?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Are you good?
I'm feeling a little better now. I vomited everything I ate this morning. Yes, so let's continue. So we're looking at peripheral devices. What is a peripheral device? Well, the definition here states that it is located outside of the CPU, but it is controlled by it. So, so far, we already determined that this is the CPU. This device here, this small area here that is on the motherboard that you're seeing here, that is your CPU. So, basically, any device that is outside of the CPU, but the CPU is still controlling it, that is called a peripheral device. So, let me see if anybody can make a guess. What device is outside of your computer but still being controlled by a computer that can be considered a peripheral device? Any guesses? You're actually familiar with quite a few of them. What is outside of your computer? A device that is outside of your computer that you use regularly.
So what kind of mouse pad?
The
So your
keyboard.
keyboard?
Correct. Your mouse, your keyboard, those are located outside of the CPU. Remember, we already said that once a device is connected to the computer, it is acting as input, it is acting as output, then it has to go through this processing stage. So that means it is connecting to the CPU. That means the CPU is controlling it. So that's why the definition can have here that these devices are being controlled by the CPU. So whatever you connect to your computer, if you connect your flash drive, if you connect your monitor, if you connect your keyboard, your mouse, your webcam, your printer, it's all going to be controlled by the CPU in your computer. Remember that CPU? We describe it as the brain of the computer. It controls everything. So everything else is like the arms and legs of that computer. So anything that is outside of the CPU is considered a peripheral device. So take note of that. Um, so notice it mentions here also input, output, storage devices. They can be considered as peripheral devices. So your hard disk, your CD-ROM, your DVD, your flash drive, your keyboard, anything that you connect to your computer. Once it is not inside of the CPU, this area here, once it's not inside of the CPU, it can be considered a peripheral device. It's just another category of or term to refer to devices, calling them peripheral devices. All right, so we actually finished with hardware now. We're uh, not completely finished. We just finished with the overview of hardware because we're gonna go more into detail as to what are the different types of input, the types of output, the types of memory, the types of storage, and so on. So this is just a brief overview of those areas. So let's look at now what is software. Um, so from software to computer program, can we have Balkisun? Can you read that for us?
Software. This is the name given to computer programs that tell the hardware how to work. Without software, the computer hardware will do absolutely nothing, as as there will be no instructions. Software includes the following types of program: computer program. These are instructions produced by programmers to create system and application software.
Good, very good. So if you notice, for future reference, I would usually mark off up to where you would have to read. So for anyone that's reading, you're gonna look for those markings basically. All right. So we already looked at hardware, which is the physical parts of your computer. We already looked at a bunch of examples of those. So now we're gonna look at the software. Why do we need software? How important is the software? Well, the software is so important that if we do not have software, the hardware will basically do nothing. Absolutely nothing. So you can make the best keyboard, the best phone, the best tablet, the best computer, but if you do not make a software that can use all of those hardware, then you have absolutely nothing. You just have paperweights. So you can think about your phone. If your phone was to die, can you still use your phone?
No, sir.
No,
No, sir.
no, you cannot use it because when your phone is dead, you're not accessing the software anymore. Unless you want to play catch with it or you want to use it as a paperweight, then in those cases it might be useful. But otherwise, if your phone is dead, you cannot access the software. So you basically cannot use anything on your phone. Even though you can physically press the buttons, even though you can see the camera, you can't do anything because the software is not running. So the computer program software, they tell the hardware how to work. They tell it how to function. So um, for example, if your computer was giving you issues in terms of being able to use it, or even your phone, it's glitching out, some things aren't working, what do persons tell you to do? Or what will you do?
Sir, power it
Restart it,
off and
sir.
power it in back.
Power it on, power it back on, good. Restart it, good. There's another method. If say the software is corrupted, what do they tell?
Sir, wipe it.
Wipe it. Very good, wipe it. So you go for the first method, you go for the restart, because normally when you restart a device, it does basically refresh the software, you can say. So that's why if our phone is tripping or if our computer is tripping, we restart it because it can refresh the software. If it had any glitch in it, it can try to fix it. But if the glitch continues to function, or if the whatever we're using is not working still, then we would need to wipe the device. And usually when we wipe a device, what is it actually doing? Anybody know what it's actually doing?
Sir, everything that you downloaded or put into a device, example computer, will just be like if you bought a new computer.
Good. So it's gonna be like if you bought a new computer. So what's actually happening is that it reinstalls the software on the computer. So it makes it look like if you bought an entirely new computer. So that's why when you reload a computer, if you had a computer for a couple of years and you reload it, it's gonna work a little more faster because the software is new. The software is going to be fresh. It's going to be run faster. Same with your phone. If you wipe your phone, it's actually going to reinstall the software, and that's going to make your phone run a little faster. Not you're not going to expect anything major like a brand new phone, but it's going to work a little better than how it was working, slowing down over time. So the main point to take away is that if hardware does not have software, then we basically have nothing. So we have a diagram here. I guess you guys can draw it to help you to remember what is the different parts of a computer. So, so notice here, the case, it has indicated here, it's a system unit case containing the central processing unit. So this is called the system unit, and the CPU is inside. We have the storage device. Notice it mentions storage device, not storage media, because remember there's a difference between the two. The device is what reads the storage media. So that's this device that you're seeing here. We have a printer, which is an output device, keyboard and mouse, which is input, and then a monitor, which is output. Alright, so if there is no software, there is no instructions, because software actually is instructions telling the hardware how to work. So there are some types of software. So remember the term software refers to computer programs. Software is the name given to computer programs. So when it comes to software, when it comes to computer programs, there are two types. There is the system software and there is the application software. So if we okay, so we then finish off our diagram here. So this is going to be memory, and this is going to be storage. Is it devices? Storage devices and storage media. But the main category is storage media. So this is going to be storage media, and it also has storage devices. And on the software now, we have the operating software, OS, and then we have the application software, AS. So you guys can take that. Alright, so let's continue. So we're at system software now. What is the system software? Okay, so I gave the wrong one there. So that's supposed to be a system software, not operating system. Where's the eraser? The operating system falls under the system software. So this is supposed to be SS, system software, and the application software. Yes, application and system. Good, so we're looking at system software firstly. And Brittany, can you read for us?
Start from where?
System software.
This system is usually called an operating system since it controls the hardware and how all other software works. The most
Um,
commonly used operating system is Windows, written by Microsoft Corporation. System software also includes utility software. This software aims to protect and maintain the system software. Just as a mechanic maintains the smooth working of a car's engine when it is serviced. Examples of the tasks undertaken by utility software include protecting software against damage caused by computer viruses, making copies of files, open bracket, backing up, close bracket, and recovering files after software has stopped working, open bracket, crash, close bracket.
very good. So we have system software, our first type of software. Now system software now has two categories also. It has the operating system and it has the utility software. So if we continue our diagram, The system software, it can be branched off with the let me swap those two. So we have application software, and then we have, let me undo. Yes. Application software, then we have system software, and then system software can be branched off to the operating system, and then we have the utility software. So those two fall under that there. Good. So the operating system that is on your computer, it controls all the hardware on your computer. This is the main software on your computer. It controls the hardware and how all other software works. So for example, we have Windows. So those of you who have a laptop right now, you are more likely using Microsoft Windows as your operating system. So it controls how your mouse works, how your monitor works, and all the other software, how Microsoft Edge works, how Paint works, and so on. So I want you guys to take some other examples of operating systems. Anybody know any other examples?
Sir, there's also Macintosh and Linux.
Good, very good, very good. So Macintosh, that is Mac OS. So you guys can take note of that. There's Mac OS. There is Linux, Linux. And have any of you ever heard of Unix? That is also another one there. Alright, so take note of that. So we're gonna pause here for today because we're at 11:31. Don't want to take up your lunch. Alright, so let's review what we looked at so far. Today we continued our 5 categories of hardware. We looked at what is the input device, getting data into the computer. Output gets processed information. For those who didn't do the homework, it's important for you to know the difference between data and information. Memory is a temporary storage on your computer. And please remember the difference between storage media and storage devices. Yes, I'll be posting the recording. A peripheral device is any device that is outside of the CPU. And then we looked at the software. So we're going to continue from software from next week here. Alright. If you guys don't have any questions, we are going to end here for today. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Hi, sir.